Bruchim haboyim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Samech Gimel Amud Beis, starting with Samech Gimel Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara continues to discuss when a person renders a halachic decision in front of his Rebbe, the ramifications. Says the Gemara, Reb Levi called the Moisiv Mila Kamei Rabbe. Anybody who then renders a halachic decision in front of his Rebbe, Ozil Lisho Beloy Vlad. He will then go without having children. Shneimar states, Vayan Yoshua ben Nun Mishares Moshe Bibechorov Mabechurov Vayom Adoni Moshe Kloim. Says Rabbi Levi that a person will go childless, he will die without children, and we have a precedent from the fact that when Eldad and Meidad at the end of Parshas Bahaloischa were then prophesying in the camp, Yoshua ben Nun said they should deserve to be put into the jail when they're prophesying against Moshe Rabbeinu that he's going to die and not going to Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, since he did that by saying that they should deserve this punishment, it was like he was rendering a halachic decision in front of Moshe. V'ksiv, and it states, on top of his Hamagim Beis, Nun Benoi Yoshua Benoi, refers to Nun was his son and Yoshua was his son, and doesn't state afterwards the children of Yoshua. So we see from here that Yoshua did not have children as a result of rendering a halachic decision in front of Moshe. The Gemara says now, Pligad Rabbi Abba Bar Papa. This actually argues on that which Rabbi Abba Bar Papa understands the punishment of Yoshua ben Nun. Rabbi Abba Bar Papa lo ne'enash Yoshua ela b'shvil shebitel es Yisrael laila achas mipir v'rivya. The reason why Yoshua ben Nun was punishment to then go childless is because he was mavatel klal Yisrael from the mitzvah Piriya v'rivya of having children. Shneimar states, Vayhi biyois Yoshua biyerichoi Vayisa Einov Vayar. When Yoshua was in Yerichoi, he lifted up his eyes that night and he beheld. What did he see? V'ksiv Vayomer Loi Ki ani sar tzva Hashem. He beheld a malach, and the malach says, I am the tzvar Hashem. Ata bosi, now I am coming. Omar Loi, Yoshua said to him, Emesh Bital. Sorry, the Malach says to Yoshua, Emesh bitaltem tamid shel ben harboim va'achshov bitaltem Talmud Torah. Earlier today, you were mevatel the korban tamid shel ben harboim, and tonight you're mevatel the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Al eizeh mein bosa. On that, Yoshua says to the Malach, which one did you come? After all, he sees that his sword is then taken out. He wants to know, what is he coming to then punish him for? Omar loi ata bosi. The Malach responds, now I am coming, referring to the bittul of Talmud Torah. Miyad, immediately, vayelech Yoshua balayla hahu b'toicha emek. It states in the pasuk that Yeshua, he went on that night in the emek. Literally, emek means the valley, but the Gemara makes a drasha. He went to the oimek, the depths of halacha, and therefore he started to learn with great intensity. Says the Gemara, we have a tradition that so long as the Aron is not going to be in the machane, because it's not going to be in the Aron, the Shechina is not going to be in its place. And therefore it's Asur B'Tashrish Hamita. So when the Aron, which was taken out for war, for battle, was not returned, Klal Yisrael was not able to then be carrying the mitzvah Piri V'Rivya that night. So we see that Yoshua was Mevatel Klal Yisrael for the mitzvah Piri V'Rivya. On that, Rabbi Abba Bar Papa says that was the punishment for Rabbi Yoshua ben Nun. Says the Gemara, Vayter Omar B'Shmuel Bar Ina Mishmei Derav Godol Talmud Torah Yoiser Me'akrovas Tmidin. Greater is Talmud Torah than the bringing of the offering of the Tmidin. The Omar le'ata basi, because the Malach said, of the two things that you're mevatil, Yoshua, ata, now, meaning tonight, when you're mevatil Klal Yisrael from Talmud Torah, they're no longer in battle, and therefore they're able to learn, and you're mevatil them. That is why I am coming. Omar Abruna bar Amarav, kol hayoshem bikiloi sheyei ish v'iish teshruyim bo. Anybody who sleeps in the same room as a husband and wife, he sleeps in the same room where a husband and wife are sleeping. Alova kosuv oimer nishei ami tigarshun. The women of my people you had expelled mi beis ta'anugeha, from the house of their enjoyment. In other words, you prevented them from being together with their husbands. V'om Rav Yosef afilu bi'ishtoi nida. And Rav Yosef said, even if the man's wife was in nida, still it applies that you're going ahead and expelling the women of my people from the house of their enjoyment, because still, although they cannot be together with marital relations, but nonetheless, you're then intruding on their privacy. Rava Amar, im ishto nidahi tavala bracha. Rava says, what do you mean? If the man's wife is in nida, by you being in the same room, you should have a bracha, because after all, you're preventing the man from being with his wife, and he's not supposed to be with his wife. So you're being a shomer on this husband from doing the wrong thing. So you should have a bracha. The Gemara says, V'lohi, this is not so, because the ad ha'idna man natre, until now, who was then protecting the husband from being with his wife who was in nida. In other words, we know when a man's wife is in nida, he's not prevented from living in the same room as his wife. And therefore, he knows the severity of the Isser of Kares when a man is with his wife who is in nida. So therefore, he's prevented from them being with his wife. You don't need a shomer to then go ahead and do that. And therefore, to say tava alav bracha is incorrect. A person should not be in the same room, sleep in the same room with a man and his wife. The Gemara now returns to the subject of our Mishnah when we have a Jewish person who is sharing the same chutzner as a Nachri. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, if there's two Yisraelim that are oyser one on the other, then indeed they cannot go ahead and use that chutzner and carry from the bayis to the chutzner or vice versa. Rabbi Meir says even if it's just one Yisrael, indeed, the Nachri is oyser on the Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Hahu mevua dehava ba Lachman baristika. There was a Nachri called Lachman baristika who dwelled in a Mavui. Omrulei, and the Mavui then was shared also by Jews. Omrulei, Oiger lon rishusach. They went to this Nachri and they said, rent for us your rishus. Because the Mishnah had told us that although the Jews cannot go ahead and use that chatzar, in this case the mavui, together with the nachri, in order to be discouraged from then living in the same chatzar as the nachri, unless they go ahead and rent the rishus of the nachri. Now, although it's true, we said that the nachri doesn't really have a rishus, but the chacham kilu gave him a rishus, again, so that the Jews will be inconvenienced and have to then rent a rishus from the Nachri to then enable them to carry from the bayis to the Chatzar and vice versa. In the case of the Mavui, from the Chatzar to the Mavui and vice versa. So here, these Jews went to the Nachri and they asked him to then rent to them his rishus. Loi ogar luhu, and he refused. Osu Amr Abai. They went and they came before Abai and they told him what had happened. Omar lehu, Abai said to them, Zilu, go, betilu rishusaychu legabechad. Amongst all of you Jews, mevatel your shoes to one of the Jews. Havale yachid b'makom nachri, v'yachid makom nachri le'omar, Allah asar. Then it will only be one Jew who has a rishus, who's sharing the mavi with the nachri. And since we don't paskin like Rabbi Meir, we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, therefore, there won't be a problem, won't be usher. You can go ahead and use that mavui. Omrulei, they said to Abaye, Midihu taima el deloshchiach, the diary. That reason why we don't follow the opinion of Rabbi Meir that one Yisrael is going to be prohibited from using the Chatzar when he's together with a Nachri is because we have a Svara. We say that it's not Shchiach when one Jew will live with a Nachri because there's a concern that the Nachri will harm him. And therefore it's only if it's two or more Jews. Then we say it's a Milsa de Shchicha, Milsa de Shchicha Gazu Barabanan. So over here, they're saying, that is the reason. But here, there are many Jews that are living here. So it would not apply the whole svara that when you have one Jew, in this case, having the reshus together with the nachri, that would not have to go ahead and rent from the nachri. Omar lehu, Abai said to them, if all of you are going to mevatel your reshus to one Jew, it's not a matter that's considered to be common. It's a milsa de la shchicha. Milsa de la shchicha lagazu barabanan. And a matter that's not shchiach, that's common, the chacham did not make a gezerah. So therefore, this is a valid eitzah, says Abai, to the Jews that were living together, that nachri. Also, Rav Huna Bred Rav Yoshua, Omra l'shmaitze kamei de Rava. Rav Huna Bred Rav Yoshua came before Rava and said over what Abai had told them. Omale, Rava said to him, on top of Samach Dalet Amud Aleph, Im kain bitalta taras eruv me'oisei mavui. If so, then you are mavata the whole institution of eruv. Because after all, the whole idea over here is to then rent a reshus. If you're going to go ahead and mavatil all of your reshuyos to one Jew, and you'll then circumvent the whole issue, then all of the reason for the takana is going to then be ruined, going to be then is not going to be used. You're mevatel it. So he said, the ma'arve, they made an eruv. By making an eruv, although it's not the eruv that's going to then allow them to carry, but that will then indicate that they're not allowed to go ahead and use the space if it wasn't for the eruv. Gemara says, Yoimru Eruv Maya b'makom nachri. But then they'll think that an Eruv is sufficient. And that's not so. We have to rent the space of the reshus of the nachri. And Eruv is not sufficient. So people make a mistake if you allow them to go ahead and carry while in the presence of the nachri, while they'll think that it's going to be correct to do so, even though you do not rent a reshus. Says the Gemara, no, the macharizon. We're going to then announce to everybody that it's not permissible to go ahead and use an eruv, but over here it's permissible. Rashi says, what is the hachraza? It says, Havu yoidin, you should know, she'ein eruveinu moyel klum. Our eruv is not doing anything. Vein anu motzin mechatzoreseinu lemavui. We're not taking out from our chatzar to the mavui. Umashe Onu metaltlin b'toicha b'shvil sheb'shus hayochid. It's only because of b'shus hayochid, but not because of the eruv. Ask the Gemara, but still, achrazos adardiki. There'll be a need to then announce it to the children, meaning to future generations who will not hear this hachraza, and they'll be then making a mistake. Eloma Rava, rather, therefore Rava says the following eights is what you should do. Leizel chad minayhu likarev le. Have one of you Jews come close to this nachri, gain a relationship with him. So that since you have a relationship with one, will then have a shaykhis with him, then he'll be able to then ask that he can put something in storage in the reshus of this nachri. And the havale beschiro velikito, then he'll have the status of a schiroi or likito. Schiro means somebody who's an employee all year long by a nachri, or a lekito, somebody who is a harvesting, partially during the time of the year, of the harvest season, for the nachri. And there the din is, all you have to do is make an eruv, even though you are only an employee, but you can go ahead and make an eruv, and that's sufficient without having to rent out property from the employer, the nachri. And that will be the eights over here as well. Have one of you then put your things next to or in the reshus of the nachri, then be considered to be a schiro v'lekitoi, and that would be enough to make your eruv and then to use the chotzer in the mavu in this case. Omar leya Amarle said to him, Abai then said to Rav Yosef the following question. Once you tell me this kula of schira v'likitoi, if you have, let's say, 5 employees amongst these nachrim, 5 different nachrim that are there in the same area, the same mavui, the same chotzer, and one of them, let's say, forgot to then go ahead and make the eruv. So are you going to say that that's going to prevent everybody else from using the chotzer? So he answered him, no. When do we say lekito and schiroi? That's to make a kula, to allow them to go ahead and circumvent the rental from the nachri. So then it's enough for the employee, the schiro lekito, to then go ahead and make an eruv. But lahachmir, to make a chumrah and require that they're going to then prevent others from using the eruv because they didn't mishtatef in it. No, that we're not saying. We don't say that if one of the lekito or schiro did not include himself in the eruv, that will then prevent everybody else from using that eruv.